guys know what your test case scenarios look like, right? So you've all created those, or at least created your template. So now we're at the stage where you're going to turn that template, those scenarios, into a test case itself. The test case looks like this, basically. It sets out, sure. No, it's not supposed to look like that. It sets out each specific item that you have to do. So, or each specific element on the page. So you've got the terms of use choice, terms of use additional information, an option to continue on the first page. And that's the one that everybody has. This is what a test case is. It basically tells you exactly what to do with each element on the page. Does everybody understand that? Just give me I can't see thumbs up. Just say no if you don't understand. Okay. Everybody understands that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through all the different elements of this test case with the help of Mia and Vinny, who were using theirs as an example, because what we did is we developed one, and when they did their test case template, they've made some improvements. And as I said, they've come up with some suggestions, and we've implemented those on theirs. So the first part of a test case template is the cover sheet. This cover sheet contains all the information about who takes the test, who wrote the test, and who's reviewing the test. It also contains some information about the number of items that you have to check, whether anything failed, or sorry, not passed. And I think that's about it. So the first part here is for the test taker. And the first time that you write a test case, you are the test case taker. So for example, this is a precedent. I almost want to, no, we can play around with this one. Okay, so here you would put in your name, today's date, the device that I'm on, which is an HP Spectre. I'm not testing on a phone, but the thing is here, this testing on a phone links into the test tab, right? So that's going to be something that you're going to want to set if you want somebody to test on a phone or on a computer. You're going to want to set that. And I'll explain a little bit more later when we get into the actual interview how that works. Browser, it's generally going to be Chrome V81. And then this is going to be run 01. So the first time you do the test, it's going to be run 01. The way that the test cases work in terms of numbers, and I'll drop this documentation in the channel. The way that they work is, Mia's done an example here, I think. It goes A through F or E. Oh. Okay, so you see here you got A, which is the scenarios, which is what you guys have done. B, which is the template, which is what we're doing now. Then you got C, which is when you're writing the test case, it's unassigned. And then it goes to D, assigned. And then E, if it passes or doesn't pass. And then F will be reviewed. So you can see here that it's case 01, because that's referring to the scenario number, and run 01. They're all going to be run 01 because it's the first time they're getting run through. Test case 09, test case 02. Then you go down here. This should all be automatic. If you're having an issue with these, then one of us will be able to help you out with them. But it basically counts how many checkboxes are in these tabs, and it goes through how many of them have passed, not passed, and if we need to resolve any of those. It's a little bit confusing, the terminology, and this is what Vinny and I discussed yesterday. These are things that, okay, actually we'll talk about this when we get to the reviewing stage. So you just don't have to worry about this block at the moment. You just have to worry about the total checks, complete, and not passed. The next step is when you're creating the test, which is what we're doing now, you want to put your name again, the date you created it, which is, and then the form name and the case number. So this is going to be the GMF family law. I'm looking at Tyler right now. He'll be doing the motion to vacate default judgment. So that's where his thing will go in there. So it'll be the form name and then case 01, because I'm doing the one for case 01, for example. It just depends on what scenario number. So it could be case 20, it could be case, whatever the scenario number is, it's going to be there. That shouldn't be yellow. I don't know why it's yellow. I'll have to fix that. Okay, so that's the cover sheet. That's all that you do in the cover sheet. The reviewing thing is basically where you once someone has written the test, you go through it and you check that anything's assigned or anything's passed or not passed. The last step is to paste your scenario in here. This is just going to be cut and pasted from your scenario sheet. You just take whatever scenario it was. Maybe we should just stop here and see if, I'm just opening this up a little bit so I can see if anyone has any questions.
This might be a stupid question, but I just want to clarify to be 100% sure. So we're still not testing it, we're just like writing.
It's a bit confusing. As you write the test, you're actually testing it. And I'll show you how, and I'll kind of show you a bit more how that works as we go into the test interview tab, the one next to base information. But the first time that you write a test, you are testing it. So you complete it as if you are doing the test. And I think that might become clear when I go into this tab with the following one. If it doesn't, then you must just let me know and we can review that. Okay. So, okay. So this next sheet is called Bates information, right? And it's made up largely of the inputs that you created in your scenarios. You'll see here you've got user, other party 2, other party 3, all the things that they had in the inputs. Another thing that they've got over here is the none, which is what I'll explain later. None is basically where you're going to have an option where you want to test what will happen if you don't put anything in, or where you have a scenario that doesn't have anything there. So for example, my go-to example is always name. You're going to want to test once with the full name, first, middle, last suffix. And then thereafter, once you've confirmed that those appear in the PDF, you're just going to want to test with first and last. You're not going to need the other names. So you'll want to put none there. I think this will become a little bit clearer when we go into the actual test interview. Up here, you've got the name. So this is where you would insert your form name. So again, Tyler, as an example, it'll be motion to vacate default judgment. This is going to stay the same on everyone's one. It's standard data range options. You don't have to worry about this, save for when you are completing your interview. You don't have to change anything here. What you might do is you might find something that's coming up a lot that you want to standardize, and then you can just talk to us and we will make a plan and put that in there. Next step. Okay, so this is basically every single element that appears in your interview. Mia, I'm wondering if it's not better for me to just open up do you have a link that I can open up your interview with?
Yeah. So the playground. Yeah.
Is there just a link that you could drop me so that I can just show people what I mean by this?
Yeah. Just 1 second. I think that one should work.
Okay, let's try it. Can everybody see this? Loading?
Yep.
Thanks, Mia. Okay. So this is the first screen that opens, right? So this is going to be the screen over here. And now you'll see that we have each element written in here in column A. So when I'm referring to element, I'm saying things that you can interact with on the screen. Green words, for example, it's a hover over. A click on, apologies. Here you've got a checkbox. Here you've got a link, and then there you've got a button. We've standardized the language somewhat, and that's evident here. And there's also a standardized language sheet, which I will drop in. So I'll make a note of the things that I wanted to send you. I've forgotten what the first one was. Oh yeah, the file names. Okay, so these are all the elements that you'll interact with on the screen. That's in column A, as well as the screen name. The screen name is, generally speaking, what appears on the screen. So here you've got Mass Access Project, you've got Mass Access Project over there. And then here you've got whether this should appear or not. Now, the first screen, not a great example because it always appears, and all of these elements should appear. The reason something wouldn't appear is if it's got show if or hide if logic. So say, for example, if you click on a checkbox and the text element appears, that would be, it'll be no. Yeah, I'll show you how it works in a little bit. The next column is C, which has data validation. So the way data validation works is it creates a dropdown. And these are the dropdowns that appeared in the standardized data validation over here. So these are ones that are generally more than often going to come up. Some other ones, such as these ones, you're going to have to go to like the specific inputs. You'll have to go to the base information here, and you can see why we had none, because sometimes you're going to want to test what happens if you don't put anything in. So, Mia, am I doing okay? Am I explaining this all right?
Yes, I think you should change like the Drew to none so that you can show that the warnings appear.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'll actually just do it with this what is your name checkbox, or a screen, sorry. I think it's maybe a little bit easier to show. So here you've got what is your name, and you'll see that there's 2 required fields. So here you're going to want to change the data validation, but this is something that's been created by Vinny and Mia. So you're going to have to go in and create your own data validation. The way you do that is by clicking on data, clicking on data validation over there, and then you've got a couple of options here, but the main ones that you're going to want to choose are either list from a range or list of items. It's always going to be list from a range when the information appears in the base information. The time when you'd have list of items is when it doesn't appear in the base information. So generally speaking, it's list from a range. And how you do that is you click list from a range, you select data range, you go into base information, and you select the range that you want to be in the dropdown, and then you just go save. I hope that was the right one. Yeah. The shortcut on computer, on PC, is Alt-AV. I can't find the shortcut on Mac, but Mia says that if you do 2-finger hold down, yeah, I'm not on a Mac. If you do a 2-finger hold down, it pulls up a menu that it's much quicker to get. So play around with that. If you find a shortcut, please let us know. I just find because you have to do sorry, there's a very loud truck. Can you hear that? I live on the 6th floor. Why is it so loud? Okay, so I find that you have to open it up so many times that having a shortcut is really beneficial. Sometimes the shortcut doesn't work. Okay, so those are the 2 kinds. Let me just show you what a list would be. Can you remember where we would have a list? I can't actually even think. Basically, what a list would look like is if you didn't have this in if you didn't have this in the base inputs, you would go list of items, and then you'd go like that, and the same thing appears. So you've still got Drew and none, but now it's coming from a list, not from a data range. The reason we want the data range is because then if you want to change something, it's really quick to just change it over here, and it automatically updates everywhere. Tyler, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you just clarify like the point of the data validation, just so I feel like if I understand why we're doing it, it might just click when I'm actually doing it for our template.
The reason we have data validation is so instead of manually each time you write a test having to figure out what's going to go in here. You just do the drop down and you can see the two options. And that's throughout the whole
Okay.
thing. So it basically, the test writer limits, the test template writer limits the test writer's choices here. So it's a much, you don't have to apply your mind as much when you're writing the tests. It's the test template writer that has to apply their mind, because they have to see, okay, what kind of element is that? How can someone interact with that element? And then include that in the drop down. I think this might be a list.
So when it says none there, is that because that's just the only option, like in that scenario, or no?
No, yeah. So say for example, you had a scenario where you wanted to try and see if you could proceed without filling in the person's name.
Okay, yeah.
You would change it all to none, like that, and then you try tap to continue, and you get a warning. So I'm going to show you how that works now. But that's basically
Okay.
what you would do. Is you basically just, the test writer gets the scenario, and then based on this, they will change the drop downs. And the reason it's drop downs is you could do it manually, but it's just much quicker for the end test writer to be choosing from 2 or 3 options, as opposed to like a whole array of options that they then have to figure out what it should be. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so then the next column is probably the most daunting at first, but after you do 1 or 2 screens, it really, I think Vinny and Mia can attest to that, it becomes relatively simple. The other benefit is that a lot of these things are pretty standardized. So for your screens, like basic questions, you guys can actually just copy and paste this and then edit based on your inputs. So you're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. Some of the logic might change, but for the most part, you're going to just be looking at this, figuring out what you can use from it and what you might have to change a little bit. But you don't have to come in with a blank sheet. You can start with this and kind of build up from that. So I'm going to show you an example here. Basically, C has the, so loud. So C has the data validation. D has the formulas, okay? One of the formulas here is called concatenate. It basically just allows you to have a cell reference and some words. And we've used that in another place, which I'll show you. Again, all of these formulas are in the sheet. You can just copy and paste them and use your logic to make sure the right information appears in the right places. This is an if statement, basically saying if C9 equals tap to continue, C next page appears, and then there's kind of like a else missing, because it should be like if else. You know what I'm trying to say, how to explain this, Mia? Can you explain it better?
So I think it's if oh, you clicked off of it, so I can't see the formula anymore.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So here you've got
yeah, so it's if C9, where it says none, is tap to continue, then see next page, but else nothing occurs. So if not, nothing occurs.
So
if it doesn't, yeah,
that's it's it does, I mean,
but it just doesn't, yeah, it just doesn't show those words.
It doesn't show else.
Yeah.
So the logic is basically like, if this is in C9, then that will appear, else that will come up, right? That's the most simple one. It gets a little bit, you change it based on what the input is or what the element is. So none, nothing occurs, otherwise data appears. Okay, and then I'm just gonna find, here you've got a little bit more complicated because you've got some other logic in there. You've got 2 if statements. Because this drop down is 3, well, you have a drop down with 3 elements, which this one is, you're gonna have 2 if statements. That's the general rule. But again, this is in front of you. You're gonna be building most of your test templates will be kind of based off of this one and very similar to this one. So it should be relatively easy to figure out the logic, or at least copy, and then just make sure the cell references are right. This is important. This needs to be included in screens where there's a required field that you can't proceed if you don't select something. So for example, here, you've got a warning appears. You've tried to proceed without filling anything in, you can't do it. So the way that this one works, Mia, I still don't really understand. Can you help us, please?
What'd you say?
Can you explain this if statement? Can you see the whole thing? It's too short.
Yeah, so it's for if C11, which is the first name, which on the page we were just on, if that's none, then the warning appears because it's a required field. And then also if C13, which is the last name, if that is none, then a warning also appears.
So basically every required field, every element that's required will need to have that on this tap to continue one. So here you've got C11, C13. Otherwise, you've got the remaining ones, which will be you can proceed without those in there. You can proceed when those are none, basically, because they're not required. The other thing that you might need is the and. Where would that be?
So this one actually, the lives in DV shelter motion. I think it's on the D40. It should be in there, I think. Nope, just kidding.
Yeah.
No.
Basically, there's a third kind of formula that you might need. Yeah, here.
There it is. Okay.
So maybe Mia and Vinny did this.
Yeah. So so here it's if in, so it's if, so for our, do you mind going to the interview and like showing where you choose started? Because I think that makes it make more sense.
Okay.
Yeah, so here, when you here for our form, the user can be any of the parties. So plaintiff, petitioner, defendant, respondent. So when you do which are you, do you mind hitting select? And so it'll say, are you starting or responding? And if you're starting, it's going to give you the option now down here, plaintiff or petitioner. But if you had picked responding, then it would have been defendant or respondent. So for our template and for the formulas in column D, we had to do the if and formulas. So at the top you can see that if C59, which is starting, is none, and then, so, sorry, wait, it disappeared.
Sorry.
If C59 is none, and C62 is none, so if starting and responding, if they put nothing in, then the warning appears because you have to put something in because that's a required field. So there's just, that logic is just like built in so that the warning is going to appear when it's not being
properly completed.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is quite a rare one, but it's something that you guys might come across, and you just know that Vinny and Mia have done this over here, and that's somewhere where you can look. And I think what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and create like a reference you know, that you guys can use the formulas again, but for the most part, you
Mhm.
can actually just copy the
And
formulas.
I think it's important to just mention, like, this is something that, like, I basically just found on Google. So it's
Yeah.
really, like, when you get confused, it's just, there's a lot of these formulas you can just Google if you're getting stuck.
That's the thing. It's not like Dr. Semble, as Mia says, you know, you don't have to
Mhm.
ask Quentin or anyone. You can actually just go on Google, and because it's a Google sheet thing, it's relatively a lot, like there's a lot of information out there for it. So so that's basically the whole thing, right? From down here, from this point, nearly finished, pretty sure that everybody's things are going to be the same. Everybody's interviews are going to be the same. It's the sign, download, flow. So when you're creating your template, you don't have to do anything here. This is all pretty much the same. The only thing you might want to change is this reference.
Mhm.
But didn't we change this? Didn't we do concatenate there? Or was it in your actual?
It might be in the actual.
Okay, so just at the court option, it's going to be basically linked to your base information, where you've got your court selection. Maybe I've copied an older one. I thought I copied straight from your guys. Oh,
The
here, yeah.
court's right.
So it is. So you just basically link it to your inputs where it's got the court information. So that's the first part of this, right? And I think that maybe I'll just show you what the next part is, but I think that the first challenge is to write the template. And then thereafter we can then come back and have a look at the remaining, you know, actually look at the logistics of the remaining sections, and how you actually write a test case after you've done the template. The first step is to do the template itself. I'm just going to quickly show you what the balance of the test case looks like, so you can have a look. Yeah.
Just the only other thing I think would be important to tell people is just when copy and pasting, the cell references may change. So if they're running into issues, that's like something in the formulas as well that like I ran into. So I think that would be important, just like show.
So cell references over here are really important to make sure that you're getting those right. And as Mia said, when you copy and paste a formula, it doesn't always take the correct cell reference with it. So, you know, while you can copy and paste the logic of the formula, it's always important to ensure that the cell references are correct. That could be an area that you might run into complications with. So the next thing is obviously the PDF that you generate. This is only going to come up when your interview runs through the whole way and generates a PDF. If you have a can't continue, this is not going to appear. You're going to delete these two sheets. But for the template, you're going to have to just basically identify all of the fields on your form, and I'll show you an easy way to do that when we get to that. I think maybe next call. I think this is quite a lot to take in. And then the next thing to do is to just go back to your base information and do data validation. I think this should be this or none, right?
Sorry, I was muted. I think we have that as it's the only option that for our interview.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Right, because you can't go. Yeah, got it. So that's just kind of where you're going to head up after you've done your test case template. Is you're going to create a template for testing the PDF. But for now, I think this is a lot of information on actually creating the test case template itself. The interview part is definitely the most challenging. It's definitely the most time-consuming aspect of it. What I would recommend is, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you guys each. There's a folder in the testing Google Drive, which has examples here, and it's got the templates, which has got basically Mia's one, and I've also put the housing I'm going to put the housing TRO one in there as well, which is what Mia and Vinny based their one off of. But just be warned that Vinny and Mia's one is the superior one, because there's definitely logic in there that's improved since the TRO, but it might just be interesting to look at the two different ones and see. And then the best way to do it, I think, What do you think, Mia? Was it easy to go from the TRO and build your own one up?
I think it probably depends on the interview. I don't know what the other interviews, you know what I mean? It depends on what their interviews look like. Like what, like
yeah.
if they're, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think what the best way to be would be to either provide you guys with it's just daunting with a blank sheet. I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of Vinny and Mia's sheet and allow you guys to, in your teams, start creating your own, your cover sheet, your base information, and then start maybe with 3 screens. I think what we did with Vinny and Mia was like 3 screens, and see how that goes. You play around with it, and then you reach out and you say like, am I doing it right? And then we can review it, either, Vinny, Mia, Chandler, myself, we can all have a look and see that you're on the right track.
And we did for us, we did 3 very different screens, so that we knew we had questions on, like, very different questions on all of them. We had one that like ran all the way through perfectly, and then that like had a PDF at the end, and then we had one that was a can't continue scenario, and then we have one that's an overflow the PDF. So just when you're like choosing which screens to start testing, maybe vary them so that you can ask all those questions.
Yeah, so that's good. Don't do screens that are going to be the same. Like, rather just try 3 screens that are going to have different logic. So I'm putting the TRO in there as well, and then I'll link you guys to that as well. So and then I'll make you each a copy. Each team that's on here, I'll make you a copy of that document. Put it in your specific folder, and then you can get started. Don't all shout at once. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
So we're going to be kind of just to start. We should obviously get the cover sheet done, which doesn't look difficult, and then we move on to that next tab. Basically, where we should be at is what you're expecting here.
Yeah, that base information tab.
Okay.
Sorry, let me put the base information tab up here. Base information tab, which is really also shouldn't be challenging because you've done all that draft in the scenarios. It's basically just a case of copying and pasting, and then figuring out what you want to test. Different variations, and then the test. So I should have mentioned with the cover sheet, when you're doing the template, you actually don't fill in this stuff. You don't need to fill any of that in because it's a template. You only fill that in when you're actually writing the test. Maybe that's why I make Eleni confused earlier. So when you do the template, you don't fill any of that in. You just put in. You just make sure that it's you've got your name over there. It should be pretty standard across the field. So it's more the test interview that might trip you guys up.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
I'm sure I will, but I'll reach out to you once I'm actually in the heat of it.
Okay, perfect. That sounds great. So the other thing that I wanted to mention, I'm just going to stop this recording.